Daily Soccer Podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Daily Newcastle. And since we're stuck in the international break, I thought I'd talk about something slightly different, as you can tell by the title. And before we begin, I want to apologise to our American listeners because this is going to come across a lot worse than it probably is, and it is not a reflection on our American soccer listeners. That is your one soccer for today. I'm not saying it again. But I do want to just reach out and just say, look, this isn't a reflection on American soccer. I've said it again. I might just say it for the whole video now. But more one of FIFA and my reflection on them rather than the USA. So with that, I'm going to explain why I believe the 2026 World Cup is going to end up being one of the worst World Cups in recent memory. I know, but just hear me out. I've got 4 primary issues, and they are big reasons why I believe the tournament could be a complete disaster. So let's get straight into it. The first is the expansion. Let's be honest, the World Cup was already massive. It had drama, it had shocks, it had moments that defined generations. Just think about that first goal in South Africa, for South Africa. The dance that goes with it, people still remember it and do it now. But now, we're going from 32 teams to 48, and it's just a bit, everyone's going to qualify now. It's cool if your country normally struggles to qualify and being English. I'm probably a little spoilt by the fact that England have always been at World Cups in my lifetime. But let's be real, qualifying for the World Cup was already relatively easy. Now, it's basically an open door policy for top nations, providing they haven't, completely capitulated. Looking at you, Italy. And it's not just the teams that's the problem. I've got no real issues with the likes of Jordan, Uzbekistan, etc. making it to the World Cup as long as they earn it, which, credit to them, they have, albeit in a different format. But it's the number of matches that we have. We go from 64 games in a standard tournament to 104 matches. That's right, 104. That's not a World Cup. That's not a Netflix series. That's Stranger Things Season 5 levels of overcompensation, and it is absolutely mental. And you're thinking, hey, more football, that's good, right? And it is to a degree, but there is a breaking point, and this smashes straight through it, goes through the other side, and smashes the wall on the other side of the on the building. It's that bad. Players now have to play an additional game in more spread out conditions. I think there's an extra 7 days, which, for players, that isn't too bad. But given the climate, travel distances, etc., let's be honest, if FIFA are trying to tell us this is about growing the game, there isn't a single person that doesn't think this is clearly about growing the old bank account. Not that Qatar left that to any of the imagination. And the truth is, as a fan of football, if Tunisia and Australia and Qatar pushed your enthusiasm to the limit, are you really going to stay up until 2 a.m. to watch Paraguay versus Jordan? Because I'm certainly not. Actually, you know what? My drunken ass probably would convince me to do just that, because I could see Miggy Almiron smile. Yeah, I don't think many will be like that, though. And then that brings me on to the second issue that I have, really, and that is the time zones, which is going to be the silent viewership killer. Let's talk about time zones, because if you're outside of North America, you are finished. Let's take the opening game, Mexico City. Mexico will come up against an opposition unknown at this moment. It'll likely kick off at 8 p.m. local time, just like the first game of the Liga Mexican season this year. Now, that is brilliant for the game in Mexico, in North America. For the UK, that's 2 a.m. And I'm fully aware the UK is just a small island in the middle of Europe that doesn't even want to be in Europe, so who gives a rat's ass about them? But for the rest of the world, Germany, France, Italy, 3 a.m. China, the largest World Cup viewership in the world for Qatar. That game in particular would kick off at 10 a.m. And the earlier matches would start at 4, 6, and 8 a.m. Qatar, 8 p.m. matches will start at 5 a.m. So you've got Europe, Asia, Middle East, global viewership for this particular World Cup. Let's be honest, going to be gone. People aren't going to be watching in those areas certainly as much as what they used to. 50 million watched alone from the UK, another 150 combined from France, Germany, Italy. In China, I believe it was almost 8 or 9 times that. I did have the figure, I can't remember off the top of my head. But China was the biggest by a country mile, and it was triple what it was in the US, who were below Indonesia. So it's going to be one of those where, yes, American viewership will skyrocket, and because you have to deal with it all the time for these tournaments in Europe, it is probably about time that there was a World Cup that suited America and Mexico and Canada. But they are praying and relying on Americans to fill the largest viewership gap in World Cup history. And to be honest, if any group of fans can, it probably is Americans. But what percentage of Americans truly care about soccer? Let's be honest, if soccer was on at the same time as American football, 90% of Americans would watch American football. And that is a big problem in the US for those that want to grow soccer. Yes, I'm sticking with soccer now. Even FIFA's own people like Victor Montagliani has basically admitted in interviews that they've messed this up. And he hasn't admitted that they've done it for their own financial gain, but I can't really blame them for not bringing that one up. But now they're stuck between protecting the players and protecting the audience. And to be honest, they might just fail at both. And the reason they're going to be looking at protecting the players is pretty much because of the same issues that we were having with the Club World Cup. If you remember the Club World Cup in America this year, players were all over the place. Enzo Fernandez being the example that sticks in my head, having to lie down on the floor in the middle of a game because it was just too hot and he couldn't play. And Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid, I think they went obviously for the financial gain, but when they were out there, they were probably thinking, we could do with not having this because this is absolutely dreadful. And however Simeone would say that in his native language, and he'd probably be a lot worse about it than I was just there. You're talking dangerous heat levels. And 90% of stadiums in the US that have been picked for this World Cup aren't suited to that kind of tournament. I think 5 have proper roofs and cooling systems to manage it. The rest are, they're going to have to be pushed to later in the evenings to aid players to make sure that they can actually play. And what this could mean, if we want to look at it from a positive perspective, is that it could mean we have the first African World Cup winner. It could mean that we see Mexico and the US defy the odds and get further into the competition. Maybe we don't see such a dominance from European teams, which is good for the competition as a whole. I think what we'll likely see is teams like Brazil and Argentina, maybe Uruguay, Colombia, they'll start to push a bit further into the competition this year. They'll look harder to beat because of the climate. And you'll actually start to see teams, maybe such as Norway, the UK, really struggle. Teams such as the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, etc., whichever ones actually qualify for the competition. England are the only ones that have so far, and let's be honest, England didn't exactly do very well with heat. But between the time zones, player issues, it's a domino effect, and it's pretty much a big, hot, sweaty, poorly scheduled mess. But that's not all. Like the Club World Cup, some matches had less than 15,000 fans. Fans didn't care about group stage games, and to be honest, I can't really blame them. If I'm not a football fan who wants to watch every game, I'm not looking at tickets for teams such as Mamelodi Sundowns and thinking, I need to go to that game. And that's nothing against Mamelodi Sundowns, because some of their games were actually really, really entertaining and they put on a show. But scalpers bought those tickets in droves and they failed to resell for more than $10 for certain games when they found out who was going to be available for each game. And I checked SeatPick during the Club World Cup just when I was looking just to be like, how much would it actually cost to go to a game while we're over there? And some games, like your Juventus versus Manchester City, massive amounts of money it would cost. Others, $10. I could have gone to 10 Club World Cup games for less than £300. And that is roughly how much it would take for me to get over to America. Is it value for money? Absolutely. But those tickets just didn't sell in the end because there wasn't an interest, and it ruined the tournament in the early stages. You know, you were looking at these kind of games with really low attendances, and it felt like pre-season. And there's a real risk that these group stage games at the World Cup feel like the friendlies that you used to get before the World Cup. I do have one major issue to get to. There were the first three there. 2 and 3 have kind of blended together. But before we get into that, I'm going to go into our advert that we always do on the podcast. And this one is, well, of course, Bionic.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionic, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionic provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionic. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
The World Cup. The biggest show on earth. And it's going to be ruined because of ticketing trauma. Real fans are going to get priced out for those that live in the Hollywood Hills and are happy to pay $4 or $5 to just get a ticket. And it gets even worse, really, because NFTs have been added as a little plot twist to ticketing. And you might be sitting there thinking, what the are you talking about, Michael? And to be honest, I was thinking exactly the same thing when I was reading it. The tournament is usually built on passion, loyalty, and the most important thing is the fans. I remember in Qatar seeing Moroccan fans in the stadiums dancing. Teams from these African nations, they've got such a loyal fan base who, because they could go to games in Qatar, because they were, I believe I was seeing tickets for the equivalent of $10 to get into these games. It was one of those where you were looking at it and going, wow, that's brilliant. They were managing to get their fans across, create an atmosphere that was unlike anything else. And I remember seeing fans just dancing in the stadiums with us when the teams would score, and it would bring a real good atmosphere, and it was the kind of thing that made you want those teams to progress further. And when you saw them, you went, well, all right, Senegal are playing here, Morocco are playing here. I remember that. You know what? Let's put it on, see if anything like that happens again. It's something additional to the football, and it's entertainment. That's what football is. It's an entertainment, and it's part of the package. But for 2026, it doesn't look like that's going to be possible because for the first time ever, fans are not just buying tickets. They're buying the right to buy passes through NFTs. For those that don't know what an NFT is, a digital token that will only give you the chance to buy a real seat later. Basically, it's a little pop-up image on your phone, like the ones you download off Google. Yeah, you're not even buying a ticket. You're buying permission to maybe buy a ticket. And these passes, some will cost hundreds, some will cost thousands. I believe the price I was seeing was around 500 for the quarterfinals. Was the one that really popped up and stood out to me. But that's before you've even seen the price of an actual ticket. Now, let's say you do have a major, I don't know what I'd call it, a major problem and you've bought the NFTs. Or maybe you're just really, really into football, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But now you've got your NFT, you're ready to buy your ticket. And then comes dynamic pricing, as bad as the first Oasis reunion gig. Just like an airline ticket, the price goes up the moment demand spikes. So that lovely tickets from $60 line, technically, it's true. But those are a tiny batch in the nosebleeds, which will be gone in seconds. Group stage tickets in good sections, you're expecting them to be a bit more expensive, but they'll be hundreds. For the knockouts games, you'll be lucky if they're in hundreds for the big teams. And the final, it's the same for any final, but it's thousands. And that is going to be even before resale starts. Dynamic pricing is going to be a really big issue. And you're probably going to have FIFA just before the tournament doing exactly the same as what Liam Gallagher did, and going, who paid $2,000 for a ticket? Sitting their first game, and everyone will just raise their hands because we're all little puppets that still buy these kind of things. And it is disgraceful, to be honest. It's something that's going to really ruin the World Cup. You're going to have people, I'm not even going to get into that because it's going to get ugly. And the only other thing that's ugly is the resale of these kind of tickets. NFT passes can be traded, which means prices will skyrocket before these tickets even exist. Fans become investors, investors become scalpers, and the bidding war begins. I'm going to be sitting there trying to get a ticket against Logan and Jake Paul, and let's be honest, I ain't got the money they do, and I'm going to really, really struggle. 4 or 5 figures for a football ticket for the average fan, it's not just unfair, it's impossible. And if I have to watch Jake Paul try and kick a ball again, I probably will rip my eyes out. But that's not the worst bit, although it is pretty bad. How often do you see scalpers for gigs and big matches selling tickets for 10 to 15 times their actual price? I remember watching, trying to get a ticket for Newcastle's Carabao Cup final win over Liverpool. Yes, I'll get that in anywhere that I can. And tickets were going for 1,200 before at the semi-final stage. And then when we actually got through, it was up to 1,600, 1,800. The cheapest you were getting was 1,400 in the nosebleeds of Wembley. So getting tickets as a genuine fan is going to be hell. And for those that are attempting it, good luck. And if you manage it without overpaying, I salute you. You're better than me. That's pretty much it. Like, it's one of those where it is about money. That's all this World Cup's going to be. And it's all the one about in Qatar was as well. All the one in Russia was. And there were still decent tournaments. But the World Cup is losing its identity very, very slowly. And this feels like the culmination. The festival of culture where students, family, die-hard fans all come together for a pure love of football. They'll all be staying at home in 2026. Because corporate guests, influencers, and anyone with a crypto wallet fat enough to outbid anyone else is going to be there. When football loses its soul, the tournament loses its magic, and that is exactly what is happening here. World Cup shouldn't feel like a luxury cruise where I haven't got a chance of going on it. You don't have a chance of going on it, more than likely. and will all be outbid by the biggest bidder. There shouldn't be a strategy behind trying to figure out what game you can go to, and it shouldn't shut out the fans who made it what it is. Fans are going to get priced out. The World Cup probably won't even feel like the World Cup in 2026, and it's going to be a real big problem. And again, just to take it back to the player aspect of it, what we saw in the Club World Cup with Enzo Fernandez, etc., and Atletico Madrid, it's a real danger for players in these conditions, because when it's that hot between noon and 5 p.m, sweating will stop working, it'll stop cooling people down, fatigue will turn into nausea, cramping will turn into external heat stroke, and you're going to see some players really struggling. And for me, it's going to be one of those where I'm still going to enjoy the tournament. I'm going to stay up till 2 a.m. probably to watch the matches, and I am probably the problem, because no matter what they do, I'll still probably watch. And it could still deliver great football, the World Cup in 2026. It could still give us iconic moments, unbelievable goals, underdogs rising to the top of the food chain, the whole lot. If we have an African winner, it will go down as one of the greatest tournaments of all time, purely because it's the first time that's happened. But when you take the issues mentioned here, the bloated expansion of the tournament, the brutal time zones, the ticketing fiascos, the dangerous heat, and the fact that it's all just there for profit, profiting off the fans. And that's before you get into the issues surrounding American politics, player visa issues, climate issues surrounding the significant travels, and to be honest, the significant issues that American people are battling against every single day. You cannot help but worry. It's going to be potentially one of the most inaccessible, inconvenient, and commercialized World Cups ever, and they might not even get the viewership that they're after. So let me know what you think. Is the 2026 World Cup already doomed, or am I just being really pessimistic, which for anyone that listens to this podcast regularly, that is virtually what I'm known for. But drop your thoughts in the comments. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Do a lot of things like this for Newcastle, which is obviously our primary interest on this channel. But as I'm having to watch England versus Albania instead of, Newcastle struggling to score goals, and you know what, maybe England versus Albania ain't that bad. But the World Cup going forward, it might be the worst of all time. Thanks for watching, and let's hope the world's greatest event isn't ruined by FIFA. See you next time.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.